In the heart of Boston, Massachusetts, lay the renowned restaurant Lella, a culinary gem that boasted 4 stars and a months-long waiting list. Within its marble walls and beneath the crystal chandelier, unforgettable culinary experiences took place. This restaurant was coveted by every chef, thanks to the reputation it carried with it. So, Shane was no different. He dreamed of working at Lella until his dream came true, and he was hired as a cook. It was Shane's first day, a young man with bright eyes and a recently acquired diploma from the country's best culinary school. He adjusted his white apron and entered the kitchen with a mix of anxiety and hope, aspiring to learn and grow under the spotlight of prestige. "You must be the rookie," came a sarcastic voice from the corner of the kitchen. It was Raymond, the sous chef, with a sharp knife in hand and a penetrating gaze. "Well, we have no time for dreamers here. Every dish that leaves this kitchen is a masterpiece. Remember that." Shane nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. "I'm here to give my best and learn, sir," he replied with determination as he familiarized himself with his station. A firm hand landed on his shoulder. "Shane, isn't it?" The voice belonged to Lincoln, the head chef. His presence was as intimidating as the rumors suggested. "I've heard about you. They say you have potential, but here, reputation counts for nothing. Show me what you can do. That's all that matters." Shane swallowed hard. "Of course, chef. Thank you for the opportunity." In the early days, the obstacles seemed endless. Orders came in at a dizzying pace, and every dish had to be flawless. Shane was determined to prove his worth, but quickly realized that passion alone wasn't enough. He faced harsh critiques, not only from Lincoln but also from other members of the team who saw the newcomer as a threat or simply another one to be tested. During a particularly busy night, Shane made a mistake on a dish that was the restaurant's specialty. Lincoln, noticing the error, called him out in front of the entire team. "Is this the best you can do?" he questioned, holding up the imperfect plate. Shane took a deep breath, sweat forming on his forehead. "I'm sorry, chef. It won't happen again." Lincoln kept his gaze fixed on him for a long moment before saying, "In this restaurant, excellence is non-negotiable. I hope you understand that." With each day bringing a new challenge, Shane began to question if he truly belonged in that kitchen. However, his passion and determination drove him to keep promising himself that he would overcome any obstacle in his path. As days passed, within the energetic and bustling kitchen of Lella, one figure stood out among all: Lincoln, the head chef. He was an imposing man, his gray hair a reflection of years in the industry, perfectly combed back. He moved through the kitchen with purpose, like a maestro in front of his orchestra. His sharp eyes missed few details, and everyone knew that working under his supervision was both an honor and a challenge. "I accept nothing less than perfection," declared Lincoln during one of the team's morning meetings. "Every dish that leaves this kitchen carries the name Lella, and I expect each of you to understand that." His gaze swept over the team, pausing for a moment at Shane. "And you," he said, pointing an accusatory finger, "are the newest here. Do you know what that means?" Shane hesitated, his heart beating quickly. "It means I have a lot to learn, chef." Lincoln laughed, a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "It means you have more to prove, and so far, I'm far from impressed." Shane felt the weight of those words. He observed almost daily how Lincoln criticized him more harshly than the others. Whether it was a slightly incorrect cut of a vegetable or a presentation that didn't meet the restaurant's stellar standards, Lincoln never missed an opportunity to point out Shane's flaws. During a particularly busy night, as Shane prepared a risotto, Lincoln approached him, watching closely. When Shane finished the dish, Lincoln looked at him and said in a low voice, "I could do this blindfolded and with one hand tied behind my back. Is this what you call a perfect risotto?" Shane felt ashamed, heat rising in his neck. "I'm trying, chef. I'll fix this." Lincoln leaned in, his voice venomous. "Trying isn't good enough here. You're either exceptional or forgettable. Decide." Those were harsh words, but that night, as he cleaned his station, Shane reflected on his career choice. He wondered if he belonged in that world where talent and passion seemed overshadowed by constant criticism. Lincoln's shadow loomed over him, making him question if he could ever truly become the chef he had dreamed of being. The week at Lella passed by in a blur for Shane. The pressure of the kitchen, combined with Lincoln's constant critical supervision, began to wear down his passion and determination. The kitchen, which once resembled a stage for culinary dreams, had now become a minefield of tension. The team could sense the growing friction between the young cook and the experienced chef. Whispers and furtive glances were exchanged whenever Lincoln approached Shane's station, with many anticipating an imminent confrontation. On a busy afternoon, while Shane was deeply focused on preparing a complex wine reduction, Lincoln approached, his expression even more severe than usual. "This sauce needs more salt," he commented after tasting a spoonful. Shane, his patience already wearing thin, retorted respectfully, "Chef, I followed the recipe to the letter. I'm sure it's balanced." Lincoln raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the response. "So, you're saying I'm wrong?" he challenged, his voice rising, drawing the attention of everyone in the kitchen. "That's not it," Shane began, trying to keep his composure. "I'm just standing up for my work." The chef took a step closer, closing the gap between them. "Maybe you've forgotten where you are. This is my restaurant, and here, my word is law." Silence filled the kitchen, each cook pausing to watch the unfolding scene. Lincoln, realizing he had everyone's attention, decided to make an example of Shane. Grabbing a fine porcelain plate, he poured Shane's sauce onto the center and, with a theatrical motion, threw it to the ground, shattering it. "That's what I think of your balanced sauce," he growled. Shane, his face red with humiliation and anger, took a deep breath. He looked around the kitchen, seeing the shocked faces of his colleagues, and then locked eyes with Lincoln's challenging gaze. "I don't need this," he finally said, his voice steady. "There's more to cooking than humiliation and ego." And with that, Shane removed his apron, placed it on the counter, and walked out of the kitchen, leaving behind the prestigious restaurant and the tyrannical chef he had once admired. A silence enveloped the kitchen with Shane's departure. Some remained silent, while others whispered among themselves, trying to make sense of Shane's decision. Even those who had never been close to him felt the impact of his action. Lincoln, at his station, avoided looking in the direction of the other cooks. However, Shane was recognized because he was one of the top culinary students. All of his teachers acknowledged his talent and aspired to a bright future for the young man. After Shane's sudden departure from Lella, Boston seemed to have lost one of its most promising young talents. Conversations in the market aisles, on the street corners of Beacon Hill, and in the lounges of the city's starred restaurants were filled with speculation about Shane's whereabouts. "I heard he went to France to study with the great culinary masters," murmured Raymond, a food critic, while taking a sip of his wine at a dinner. To which Martha, the owner of a renowned culinary school in Boston, replied, "No, I heard he went to Japan, fascinated by the precision and ritual of their cuisine." The rumors varied. Some suggested he had moved to the Mediterranean, immersing himself in the rich culinary traditions of that region. Others claimed that Shane had distanced himself entirely from cooking, opting for a completely different life, perhaps as a writer or a photographer traveling the world. His closest friends, like Laura, were constantly approached by acquaintances and strangers alike, all with the same question on their lips: "Do you have any news about Shane?" Laura, trying to hide the sadness in her voice, always replied, "The last time we talked, he said he needed some time for himself. He promised that when he was ready, he would come back." She maintained correspondence with Shane in the first few months after his departure, but the letters became increasingly spaced out and eventually stopped. The few letters she received had no postmarks or return addresses, only Shane's familiar handwriting sharing deep thoughts and reflections, but never detailing his location or activities. On a cold night, Laura and a few other friends of Shane gathered in her apartment, sharing memories and stories about him. "Wherever Shane may be," Laura began, looking at an old photo of them together, "I hope he has found what he was looking for." Days passed, and a new venture, new eclectic, emerged amid the urban landscape of Boston. A new restaurant named New Eclectic opened its doors, quickly becoming the epicenter of all conversations. Its unassuming exteriors gave no hint of the culinary revolution happening inside. The restaurant didn't advertise, didn't have an Instagram account, and reservations were notoriously hard to come by. During a Sunday brunch, two friends, Rebecca and Sarah, were discussing the new spot. "Have you heard of New Eclectic?" asked Rebecca, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Sarah nodded. "Yes, but it's nearly impossible to get a reservation. They say it's a culinary experience that redefines everything you thought you knew about food." Rebecca leaned in, whispering, "I heard nobody really knows who the chef is, but whoever it is, they are absolutely brilliant. Every dish is a work of art." In another corner of the city, at a bustling wine bar, two chefs were discussing the phenomenon. "It's not just the presentation or the taste, it's the innovation. They blend Eastern techniques with Western flavors in a way I've never seen," commented Alex, taking a sip of his Chardonnay. His friend Daniel, with an intrigued look, asked, "Who do you think is behind this?" "I've heard rumors that it's an internationally renowned chef looking for a new challenge." Meanwhile, at New Eclectic itself, a table was being served with dishes that seemed almost magical. The table was filled with vibrant colors, surprising textures, and seductive aromas. The waiter, with a confident smile, said, "I hope you enjoy every bite. Our chef believes that each dish tells a story." One of the guests, a culinary critic named Clara, couldn't contain her curiosity. "Can we meet the chef? Their food is absolutely extraordinary." The waiter smiled mysteriously. "Unfortunately, the chef prefers to remain anonymous. They believe their food should speak for itself." And so, the mystery surrounding New Eclectic and its enigmatic chef continued to fuel conversations, speculations, and, above all, a hunger for truly extraordinary culinary experiences. In another part of the city, in the chandelier-lit dining room of Lella, Lincoln, the renowned chef, ran his fingers through a recent culinary review, his eyes narrowing with each mention of New Eclectic. He had always prided himself on being at the forefront of Boston's culinary scene, and these whispers about a new restaurant were a challenge to his dominance. By his side, his girlfriend Elise, an elegant brunette with a love for novelty, spoke enthusiastically about New Eclectic. "Everyone is talking about it, Lincoln. They say the food is unlike anything they've ever tasted before." Lincoln closed the newspaper with a brisk gesture, rolling his eyes. "It's just a passing trend, Elise. In a few months, everyone will have forgotten about that place." She stared at him, her eyes challenging. "Why are you so threatened? If you truly believed in the quality of Lella, why not go there and see for yourself?" Lincoln tensed up. "I'm not threatened. I just don't see the need to validate every new restaurant that opens its doors." Elise leaned forward, her tone gentle but firm. "It's about more than that, Lincoln. Hearing about new places and exploring them is part of what made you who you are. Don't become complacent now. Go and see what they have to offer." Lincoln looked at Elise, his gaze wavering between irritation and affection. He knew she was right, but pride prevented him from admitting it. "Fine," he finally said. "We'll go to New Eclectic, but only to prove that Lella is still unrivaled." Elise smiled, satisfied. "That's all I'm asking for, an open mind." However, while Lincoln voiced confidence, a part of him was uncertain. He wouldn't admit it, but the possibility of there being something out there that could challenge his supremacy troubled him. He was about to step into unknown territory, and only time would tell if he would emerge triumphant or humbled. After securing a reservation at the restaurant after months of trying, Lincoln, accompanied by Elise, stepped into New Eclectic, expecting to find an overhyped and substance-lacking place. However, he was immediately enveloped in an aura of elegance and sophistication. The restaurant's interior had a modern touch, but retained the essence of a cozy ambience, with warm lights hanging from geometric structures and walls adorned with contemporary artwork. With every detail, the restaurant seemed to tell a story. They were greeted by a hostess who smiled warmly. "Good evening, Mr. Lincoln. It's an honor to have you with us tonight," she said, leading them to a reserved table in the most intimate corner of the restaurant. Elise, observing Lincoln's expression, whispered, "Admit it, this has already exceeded your expectations, hasn't it?" Lincoln, trying to maintain his impassive demeanor, replied, "The atmosphere is pleasant, but I came here for the food." The waiter approached, presenting the menu with a courteous smile. "Our specialty tonight is a wild mushroom risotto with hints of black truffles and a special touch from the chef." Lincoln nodded, and they placed their orders. As they waited, he couldn't help but notice the satisfied murmurs of the patrons around them. Every dish that passed by seemed like a visual masterpiece, and the murmurs of approval were undeniable. Finally, their dishes arrived. The presentation was impeccable. Lincoln took his first forkful, and a shiver of pleasure ran through him. It was undeniably extraordinary. The combination of flavors, the perfect texture of the risotto, and that seasoning. He knew it from somewhere. He tried to delve into his culinary memories, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. "This is amazing," Elise murmured, savoring every bite. Lincoln, still absorbed, asked the waiter, "What is the seasoning in this risotto? There's something so familiar, but I can't identify it." The waiter smiled mysteriously. "It's the chef's secret touch. He combines traditional flavors with something unique, something all his own." Lincoln nodded, his curiosity piqued. Each subsequent dish reaffirmed his initial impression. This place was special, and that seasoning, that unmistakable signature, continued to haunt him like a long-forgotten melody that suddenly resurfaces but remains just out of reach. He needed to uncover the secret behind New Eclectic. That night was so extraordinary, yet Lincoln found himself searching his memory because he knew he had encountered that specific flavor before. The meal had been quite an experience, leaving Lincoln unsettled by the distant and familiar taste he couldn't identify. He needed to meet the genius behind the dishes. With a nod, he signaled the waiter. "I'd like to greet the chef," he requested, trying to keep his voice neutral. The waiter nodded. "Certainly, I'll check if he's available." While waiting, Lincoln idly played with his wine glass, feeling Elise's expectant gaze. She seemed as curious as he was, her eyes shining with anticipation. The kitchen door swung open, and a familiar figure emerged. Lincoln's eyes widened in shock and recognition. Shane, the young cook he had scorned and ridiculed, was now standing before him as the chef of one of the most talked-about restaurants in the city. "Good evening, Lincoln," Shane said with a calm and controlled voice, though his eyes revealed a mix of satisfaction and tension. Lincoln, for a moment, was rendered speechless. He struggled to compose himself, his mind spinning. "Shane, I didn't expect to find you here," Shane gave a small smile. "Life is full of surprises." Elise, sensing the palpable tension, interjected. "The food was divine, Shane. Congratulations on your success." "Thank you, Elise." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Shane replied, still keeping his gaze fixed on Lincoln. Lincoln cleared his throat. "The risotto, there was something about it, a flavor I can't quite identify." Shane tilted his head slightly. "Sometimes the best things are those that are familiar to us, but that we've learned to see in a new light." There was a moment of charged silence between the two men, shared history, hurts, and resentments. It all hung in the air. Lincoln finally sighed. "You did well to leave, Shane. You found your own path. I was wrong about you." Shane nodded. "We learn more from our mistakes than our successes." "Thank you, Lincoln." Shane sighed deeply, leaning against the edge of the table, his eyes distant. "When I left the restaurant," he began, "I felt a mixture of anger and liberation. It was like a burden had been lifted, but at the same time, I was completely lost." He leaned back, seeming to gather his memories. "I needed to find myself again, to understand who I truly was as a cook." "So, I traveled," Lincoln interrupted. "Traveled where to?" With a wistful smile, Shane replied, "Everywhere. First, I went to France. In Paris, I immersed myself in classical techniques, but I also discovered a love for bread at the little corner boulangerie. Then, I traveled through Italy, learning about the purity of ingredients in Florence. Anna taught me the true art of making pasta. Elise, her eyes shining with interest, asked, and then? Then I went to Japan, Shane continued. There, I learned the true definition of patience and precision. The sushi masters of Tokyo, the ramen masters of Kyoto, they showed me that cooking is a form of meditation, a connection to the ingredient, to the land, and above all, to yourself. Shane paused, looking emotional. But the greatest revelation came in Thailand. There, in a small mountain village, an elderly woman taught me about balance. Not just in food, but in life. Salty, sweet, sour, bitter, everything must be in harmony. Lincoln, visibly moved, murmured, "That's what I feel in your dishes now." Balance. Harmony. Shane nodded. Yes, this journey was not just about food, it was a journey of self-discovery. I needed to lose myself to find myself. Elise, with tears in her eyes, said, "It's an inspiring story, Shane. We're all on a journey, aren't we?" Shane smiled gently. We all are, Elise. The question is, what do we choose to learn along the way? After this reunion, Lincoln seemed to realize the weight of his past actions. Shane's humility and sincerity brought about deep introspection. With downcast eyes and a trembling voice, Lincoln began, "Shane, I was so caught up in my own ego and success that I never stopped to recognize the talent that was right in front of me. I treated you unfairly. I belittled you when I should have supported you." Shane lifted his gaze, his eyes still holding a cautious glimmer. "Lincoln," he said softly, "the past can't be undone." But Lincoln interrupted, "I know, and I don't expect you to simply forget everything. But I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. I regret how I treated you." Shane looked at Lincoln, his eyes deeply studying the man before him. "You know, Lincoln, the pain and resentment I felt, they drove me. But I also learned that holding on to grudges is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Lincoln smiled sadly. "You've grown, Shane. In many ways, you're wiser than I ever was." Shane shrugged with a half-smile. "Maybe. But I wouldn't be here without the lessons you intentionally or not taught me." Lincoln seemed surprised. "Really?" Shane confirmed, "Really." Conclusion, "Really?" Shane confirmed, "Conclusion." "But now, how about we start fresh? Not as chef and subordinate, but as colleagues, friends, perhaps?" Lincoln laughed, a genuine and happy sound. "I'd love that, Shane." Shane smiled, his eyes gleaming with an idea. "You know, I've been thinking about hosting a special event here, a collaboration between chefs. It would be an honor to have you as my special guest." Lincoln's eyes lit up. "That would be amazing, Shane. A true fusion of our styles, the beginning of a new chapter for both of us." The two men sealed the deal with a firm handshake, not just as colleagues, but as friends who had weathered the storm together and emerged stronger on the other side. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.